we do this in Swedish, English? Mm. Me too.
Yeah, so do you see? This is the
Yeah,
live stream.
perfect.
So on the live stream that people are actually watching, it's going to be mostly your.
My head, because I will always look at.
It'll be mostly your screen that
Yeah.
you're sharing,
Mm.
and then like a small thing of like you live speaking. I think.
Do you hear me now? Hör du mig?
It's like, hey. Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Mm.
Vi ska beställa pizza. Är det någon som har allergier?
Så. Yes. Yeah. Does it work?
It's on. Yeah, you should hear it on the live stream. But there is a delay, like a pretty big delay, like 5 minute delay. Yeah, like a couple of minutes delay. Yeah.
Or 30 seconds?
30 seconds. I exaggerated. We are 5 plus the speaker plus. But James is in here, so there we go.
I work now with British police administration.
Okay.
We were yesterday talking about this
Yeah.
crime prevention and tracking. We have a lot of leads.
Yeah.
I want to show some transaction try website.
Yep. It's good.
Would you like an introduction? Or
Yeah, why not?
on hearts?
No, I can do it by myself if you like. Yes, I do. Hello everyone. My name is Anders Jansson. I work at Microsoft. That means I'm sitting helping already on Azure, putting them in their project to block or make structure. Today, solution delivered during the summer and scale, so we can more rapidly create landing zones for different projects inside a company. This solution is for quite big customers, so it's not the one that you start with as a small startup. This is built for if you have like 100 subscriptions and up to 1,000 subscriptions. So, but feel free to ask me questions. I will do a session of 45 minutes and then it's a break and then we do another 45 minutes. And I will try to do a lot of demos. And I hope the team in Malmö that sits there as well, they hear me. I don't hear any feedback, so I will start. Scale to talk and what it is, and then we go through the principles, the guidelines, and then how to implement this, and how you can use our reference installation of this. And then we have some next steps, how you can learn and take this further. All right. At start, many customers when they start using Azure, they will come to some blockers, and one of them is they're trying to build a really complex architecture. They're trying, like in the network world, they're trying to build a network like on-prem in cloud that is hit problems like this. They need to understand how to create in the cloud, and therefore with great capability where the different team customer says we can do this in the cloud, or lists on-prem, a company teach our customers how to deploy, because we have this to hyperscale, so every customer can use how many virtual machines they would like to. And that's the lack of trust and desire of control. The customer needs to trust us and to be in control to put their production environment at us. In many projects, I'm helping the customers. They start doing this in a different way. This is a common behavior by partner, by the customer, and we have some common blockers. Some of the customers say they're acting too soon. They do a big bet. We would like to move 100 years. We will do that 1 year, and then the whole IT organization back is to say, yeah, off. And then to be able to deliver the 100 workloads, then you need to do the first workload. Before that, you need to learn the first 10 workloads. Before that, you need to do the first workload. So you understand this. And then, before we do the first, we need to be aligned. The order governance, security rules in Azure as we have on-prem. You stop the project, and you have a couple of months just to do the rules you have in Azure. You should have the same as we have on-prem. And then it can be the other way. You have a nice project they in a corner, they workload as a proof of concept, and everyone say, yeah, yippee, that's working fine. And then they say, all right, we take the next 10 workloads. And that's also working. And everyone's happy. And then they say, all right, now we're going to push the first production workload. And then the guys start to talk, do you have the security, blah, 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 and so on. But maybe you push it there anyway, and then you say, all right, we have done the first production workload. Now we're going to do the rest. And then to be enterprise ready in a bigger organization, the security and the governance guys say, stop, you're not compliant. Okay. We, the organization, learn how this platform works before we can do a big scale of this. That's why we have come up with this enterprise scale. It was an internal product called North Star inside Microsoft, where the community with people like me, cloud solution architects around the world, get together and helped some big customers, and then we take the learning from them to create this. This is not perfect, but this is a good starting point. I will share about today. So, what is this then? You can take a metaphor about the metropolis. In a big city, you have rules of gas and electricity before you can build a building. This should be the same. We have certain rules. If you'd like to add a platform, you should follow certain rules. For example, if you would like to connect better on-prem, you're not allowed to public endpoints, for example. It's quite fair. If you have a public application, okay, run it public, but you're not allowed to access our internal systems. You need to have an IAM, identity and access management, who has access to certain things. So not everyone can log in the portal and just do delete. And then you need to have policies. Are you allowed to deploy the biggest machine with 1 terabyte of RAM and 500 cores? That will cost you a lot. Or you can set those rules. And then we have the management and the monitoring. This is utility stuff. when you create a place, application, and so on. If anyone has any questions here in Stockholm, you can just ask them. What we have created, when we developed this, we said this should be open source, as everything we do in Microsoft nowadays. It's an architectural approach, a reference implementation, where we can effectivize the construct and the operationalization of landing zones. This should be automated. An automated way to create landing zones. So we don't need to do a lot of clicks, and we need to wait on the service desk things. And also could be aligned with our, and this should be a way that we have our product teams, product groups, service is configured we support, so we have an support. And also be aligned with the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. Read it, a lot of guidance, strategy plan, and execute on this. It will provide this view of the design of an Azure platform, proven such information like 10 or 15 big customers when we 1,000 each customer knowledge with it. And if it's applied this Monday morning, it should be easy, it should be code, it should be correct, even if you do it by a Monday morning when you're so tired. And then we have this enterprise scale architecture, and then we have the reference implementation. And you have the link here as well, where you can go and get all of this information. I will show the documentation. All right. We also have tried to create a big picture of this. It's quite complex. I will step through all the details, but I will not do this super detailed because we don't have time. For instance, design. This is the design every customer will be. This is the design that you can link to and say, okay, this is this, and then we can change this. All right. We need what is that, and create some purposes of this. And the landing zone, in our case, is a subscription. You give one subscription to an application team or to a business unit, and they are managing that to create their applications. So in this picture, you see the green stuff in the middle. That the resources in Azure that the business team, the developer, are responsible for. They create the virtual machines, storage accounts, web applications, functions, whatever it is. Then the platform team, we're going to talk about that, responsible for all the governance, security, have created the blue. Created policies around identity access management, monitoring, that stuff should be monitored. You can't remove that. And if you're going to connect back to on-prem, maybe you have a network ready to deploy and just add the machines. But then you have a policy saying, all right, I'm not allowed to create public endpoints in this subscription. So it should be all wired when you start. So the application team can just start and doing this. All right. Now we can start talking about these operating models. This is companies say, "Oh, we need to reorganize." This is not the exact issue. This is one way to organize, but you think like this, if we're creating a platform for our company in Flash, where we deliver land zones for different, the green squares is some different projects. We have our DevOps platform that I work today, where we say when we create new stuff, we have some policies that apply that this will be a certain way, and we have some custom rules for the identity team, for the networking team, for the security team, and so on. So they will have a full picture, a top-down picture, so the network team can see every network device, every network, virtual network inside the environment, every public endpoint, and say, this is allowed, this is not allowed. And then you have our security team can say, all right, you're allowed to do an exception if you would like to do opening some stuff to the internet, and so on. But this is, some companies would like to give the different team as freedom as possible, so they do in as much as possible. But other customers saying, all right, you're not allowed to do anything. We should install all the virtual machines for you as well. But this is, you need to choose where to be on this. This is a really important thing to understand. So the things I showed today is only the blue ones in here. We will not do the last mile deployment in the subscription. That will the team that's been given access to the landing zone. All right? I'll do a short demo here. I hope my is working. So this documentation to CAF framework. So public. Here we have how to create landing zones under the red here. Use different implementation options in this case. I will talk about this enterprise scale, but you can also start with the blueprints and start small and scale. So if you're a small customer, you should look at that and start with the blueprints, and then you can scale. In this case, we will start with the enterprise scale. We have a bunch of subscription that we need to manage. Then we have, under here, we have the overview, and we have all this where the architecture, the design principles that will go through, the guidelines, the critical design areas, and so on. We also have this a Git, sorry, that is available. Where we have the reference installation here. So here we have this architecture, all the designs, and we can all. I should just show you that we can deploy one of these reference installations, so we can look at that later. So in this case, I'll come back to this. We have 3 different reference implementations, and the first one is Azure only. We don't have a network. We just use things or PaaS services. One we have on activity with our service called Azure Virtual WAN. Then we have the on-premise environment connected with a network hub and spokesman. So we can take the Composer, for example. Here we deploy when we deploy this reference architecture. We will create a tenant route at the tenant level in So you need to be admin in Azure AD to be able to deploy this fully. Then we create a management structure of management groups where we can apply different policies. Then we use this to deploy our management stuff. So we create management group on the platform for management where we put all our logging and monitoring, and we create that by policy. So it will create log analytics workspace and automatic to that. And then we create for connectivity. Here we can connect our hub, or in this case, virtual hub. So, and all the firewalls, so they have control of everyone in the environment if they are going through internet, and so on. And then we have the identity as an optional part, where we can add our local domain controller if we have one. So they can set them in a separate identity subscription. So you have extra control, and you can block others from having access. And then we have our landing zones that are also different management group subscriptions. It can be connected network to this. So if I go back one step, we can click here. We will do this other browser that we have options. So when I click on this link, I'll be redirected to the Azure portal, and I'll log in as the user I am in this browser. So here I can do a custom deployment in my directory, in my tenant. I choose what region. We deploy this in the North Europe region. And then we can set a prefix. What's the name of the company, you can say. Go to 10. What's this? Figure is where should we log in base in now and need subscriptions, so I can't deploy this, but I can select no here. I have deployed it before, but because it takes some time. And then we do the same on the virtual WAN. We add a subscription, we add the virtual the IP address, everything, and then we can deploy this. And we can also, we would like to and we also subscription for landing zone, but we also say this is the policy for landing zones. So we should ensure that every backup. And we can restrict our from can we can prevent forwarding. With SQL, we should do encryption and so on. Then we need to say no. We're missing a value. All right, we can take the other one. Sorry for that. We need to have, this is mandatory in this case, we can do like, sorry for that. We take this one instead, and then we have We choose the North Europe, and then we say go to 10, and then we say no, and then we say no, and then we say no. All right, it's too long. Then we do the validation. You can do all this ARM template in the back. Yes. Now, just create this. Now we will deploy new management and everything with a lot of policies that we can. Right. We can go back to the presentation. Design principles. We try to enable autonomy in innovation in information in this. So each team, we support that they will be autonomous and they be responsible by themselves. And we try to create security and compliance by default. So when they get a subscription, it's secure and compliant as the rules you have set. And we do governance at scale. So we have certain principle. We talk about subscription democratization, and you should create a subscription for every application. That doesn't mean that every small application can subscription, but different responsibilities in different projects. They should have one subscription to deploy their application. And then you can have rules for, you should have one subscription for test, and one for production, and one for test, and so on. When we have a subscription, we have the boundaries, and you will also limit some limitations that we have in our platform, because you can't have that many virtual machines inside a subscription. You can have like 5,000. Many of these customers have more than 5,000 servers. Then we need to divide the environment in one way, and we do it in subscriptions. And the principle is that it guardrails how we say how you will say you're not allowed to public to use regions, you're not allowed to use SKUs virtual machines. The third design principle is control. We should use an extra action. Have some partner that create a factor saying the org just do deployments for you. But if we use our resource manager to create that, we can use feature directly. We can do modes of control. We can do that. We can do that as well. And we also the focus application centric. What that should support in supporting the feature that says we should lift and shift the IT environment. If you have a BI application, you should support that application itself support like where and it's all about we should all of that application and pass service EOS services as well. And the last one, but very important, this must be our native design. Our product teams, our design team, developer teams should say, this is the way you should configure this service. I have many cases when the customer has done some other customization of the service, and then we, after a while, will reach some limits. And then they say, you have a bad service. Yeah, but we have built this in this way. You should use it like this. And that's what we try to do here. And we also align it with our roadmap. Understand how today is about the roadmap. We, Google, everyone is coming. We're talking about what's here now. All right. The design guidelines. And now we come back to some more technical stuff. We have 50 more minutes before we... Is that clock okay? Yeah. Good. One of the things you need to understand is we have stuff called enterprise enrollments, and we have some enterprise or Azure AD tenants. The enrollment is the agreement that you have with Microsoft. You're a big customer, you do an agreement up front or not. The agreement for them is how it's worked. And then you need to choose, do we have one tenant or two tenants? And then you need to have an access management policy or function that works. You have access. Then we need to create groups, subscription organization. When should we need subscription? Should we create it for everyone that just asks, or should they pay it up by themselves, and so on? You need to. And then we have the network topology or the connectivity. How should we connect all this stuff together if we're building a big environment? And then we have management and monitoring, that you should educate and choose and design this so the team that should operate this, they know where to look and find stuff when the production workload lands in Azure. So they say, oh, we can't see anything. Project. Then we have after talk about disaster recovery. Even the cloud stops sometimes. We have an outage in UK yesterday. A couple of hundreds customers were affected. Yeah, and we fixed it in a few hours. But it happens. So if you have a really, really important application, you should design it for business continuity. And then we have security, governance, and compliance. For example, if we have certain rules we should follow, that we have used our own encryption keys and so on, then we should do it always. And then automation and DevOps. So you can all this. This is the hardest piece. In the last 10 years, what is and this is the one either way starting point, and we need to learn how we should manage such a platform as code in the future. It's really simple just to deploy it, but the next 6 months when you do updates and so on, how should you handle it? We have an idea, but all right. I will talk a little about each so you understand. When you have an enrollment, you have an enrollment portal or the EA portal where you today create your subscriptions. It's another portal. It's not Azure portal, but you can from the Azure portal create new subscription, but you come to another portal. And in this portal, department, you can have a counter, you need to create a subscription. And you can also have service administration and so on. But the most important here is you can use your tenant's accounts, work and school accounts, to log into this. That's good. But then you can also use your Microsoft ID if you give me, with my Microsoft ID, enterprise admin rights, then I'm in control. You can't block my account. If you have a work and school account, if I left the company, you can say disable account. But if you have a Microsoft account, it's still there. You need to go into this in this portal and remove me. We back in the days recommend the customers to enable Azure the Microsoft account 10 years ago. So, but you need to remove it. Another important thing is some customers haven't set the email address there. They have a different name that's logged in as admin. It's automatically configured there. But the email address of that account, they didn't look at it. And we were sending all the important information about our services. So when they do deletion of a subscription, we send an email and say, we will delete this in 90 days. So we have a big customer in Europe that didn't have the control of this. And one day, like 15 subscriptions are gone. Then we can say, when we track this and we help them and enable them again, but 90 days ago, someone deleted them. And we can say, this person, we aren't aware who's the owner of the subscription if you tell us. So you need to configure this. It's really important. Now we have added, if you are an owner in a subscription, you will also be included in all these mails. Right. Identity and access management. You should use our AirBack roles in the portal. You can say, be a contributor, be a reader, and have access to certain service and so on. And we recommend that you enforce multi-factor authentication. It's free now, so use it. Every account change. Otherwise, someone can your account and stuff. It's just a password. We use Azure privileged identity PIM. I will in a minute, but give be entitled to ask for permission. So, for example, I can be a reader in a subscription, and then I need, for a certain work, be an admin. Then I can say I need to be admin. Then for like 4 hours, 8 hours, I'm an admin in that subscription, and then I'm removed. You should integrate all the AD logs in a central logging platform, Azure Monitor, so you have control. You should also use custom AirBack roles if needed. We recommend you have at least 3. I'll come back to them. All right. We do a quick demo, then we now see our deployment. Good. And we can check one. So if we check on all services, and then we do management groups. Now we have 2 here. I created one before. Everything configured that we're going to do later on, but one we created. When we created this management mission, landing zones, platform, sandbox. And the commission, here can you place go away. At the top, all the watch machines inside that and just moving it. So there's there a certain time. Then we can have sandbox with whatever you want. policies, you will be really innovative, but you're not allowed to connect back to our environment. On the platform, we have the connectivity, we have the identity, and we have the management. And on the landing zones, we have created one for cooperation, one for online, and one for SAP. And here you can add your own, just creating them. I will show how. So if we go into this, and then if we click on policies, what we are deploying when we actually do this, we create a bunch of policies. You can check custom. So we had a lot of custom policies that you can use. We are working with the Azure policy team, so this will be built in the future. Then we will manage and update the policies. Now it's the enterprise scale team that updates these policies over time. But here we have some, we can deny public endpoints for PaaS services. Then it's all our PaaS services. And then we can have another policy saying, all right, we should enable diagnostic settings on every services to send the data to log analytics. Every resource that we create in a subscription, a management group, a network, storage account, have this configured design when you create it. Right. We go back to the idea within the Azure AD. We search for PIM. I configured a landing zone with an entitlement, so a user can ask for permissions. So if I use my other browser, so here we have we can log out. No, we don't need. So here you see I'm a reader in this subscription now, and I can't create anything. I'm just can view stuff, but I need to deploy anything. I need to deploy a new virtual machine or a new storage account, for example. Then I can go into this PIM portal and on and I can have roles. For example, myself a global admin, but I can also have Azure resources. So in this case, I can activate my role and say, all right, I need to be admin for 8 hours. Need access to deploy a VM. And I have the scope, and you can configure this in the background, so another person needs to say, okay, in this case it's auto-approved, I can just give me access to do this faster. See that validate how login in. Otherwise you need to check wait for the tokens. And then it's activated. Right. Refresh. We see that we have specified access. I create a specific some number, so how and so on this subscription. I'll come back later. Right, I think that's for now. I'll start with the next one after the break. Is that okay? Yes, I. Okay. Did you hear anything or? Okay. Okay. Should I disable anything up here? Okay, good. Yeah. See you in 50 minutes then.
I think in half an hour.
All right. Yeah. Half an hour. Okay. Right. It's 19. They can go and buy some more pizza. Yeah. Yes. See. Hope you all had and in Malmö. We will go directly back into this lines or talk about management groups. This management group would be billing, follow your organization. It should be more to handle the platform. But this is like always when you discuss the hierarchy inside an Azure directory or Active Directory, you can talk hours about it. And our propose is to create a quite simple 3 to 4 levels. We support up to 8 levels, but you can handle this for cost as well and set different policy. Our recommendation in enterprise scale is to set the policy on the management group. So when you create a new subscription, you just place it in the correct management group. And then all the policies for that management group apply, and then it's secure compliant. Otherwise, you do a specific task on that subscription to configure it. That's also why we have decided not to use Azure Blueprints. It's another service in Azure that can deploy these kind of things. Azure Blueprints only support deployment on the subscription level. But with this, we're using ARM in the background. We can deploy on the tenant level, on the management group level, on the subscription level, on the resource group level as well. On all the levels. Right. Jump to some of the key topics. When you create and plan your network topology in Azure. We have, as you saw in the portal, we have two versions of this with a service called Virtual within the portal. It's a Microsoft-based route. We create and we will handle the routing service like this hub. So when you just connect your different spokes, it's called the virtual network in each subscription, we will handle the routing for that. In the other topology called hub and spoke, you need to handle, if you need to have more than one hub talk to each other, you need to handle the routing by yourself. And it can be quite complex. Other things to consider when you look at this is the IP planning. We only allow this black IP addresses, these ranges, that is not allowed on the internet. You can use other, but we will not block you. And if you would like to access a virtual network, pair it to another virtual network, you can do the IP ranges cannot be overlapping. So that maybe is a problem in the future when a company buy another company and you should merge the environments together. Then we will have a routing issue. And we have different workarounds, but in the design, this is plain. We use different. You need to have a DNS, domain name service, to resolve internet or other hosts inside the network. We have a service that is public, But if you use your Active Directory, you need to deploy by yourself. You can point to custom servers in Azure. All your internal. All right. I will go through. Show it to the portal. Here are all the guidelines. Under each sections, I haven't talked about all. Here we have design consideration, our recommendations, a lot of them that we should say that you should follow this. But in some cases, it's not possible. But here on the define the topology, here we have the virtual WAN. I think I have a picture down here. Here we see this hub-to-hub communication on the picture here. It's between the virtual WAN. It's included in the platform. You don't need to do an extra. And we say if you're going to use more than 2 Azure regions at the same time, it should be a lot easier to deploy virtual. For example, if you're a company, one region in Europe, one in US, you can use for Azure. Now we have the topology. We have hub and we have logs, and between different hubs, we have different ways to connect them. And you need to have a or to connect or and we don't support if you gain more that configuring will go routing errors and then say come to our support and say okay, why doesn't it work? We don't support it. So another thing good to know if you're creating a really important application with Express route, the SLA on the Express route is only 99.9, and the Express route circuit is not sitting actually in the region, it's sitting out at our edges in our WAN network. So it can be a good point to have more than one Express route. It's important. Even if you're going to do under a single point on one Express route. The connectivity to Azure and the connectivity to PaaS services, we have come up with, it's another topic, but we have come up with a new service this summer called Private Link. So where we can create private IP addresses for all our PaaS services. So in the case you will not allow any public traffic to PaaS service, you can create a public endpoint for a storage account, for a web application, and you have an internal DNS name for it with your IP address. So that's possible nowadays. And this platform supports it to apply. Right. We jump through. The management and monitoring, a service called Log Analytics, where we collect all our sources, source and logs to analytics and way to Azure Mon. But in the back end, it's Log Analytics and query language called Custo or QQL, also QKL, Custo query language. So you can search on all the data. I will show it in the portal as well. But the important thing that we say in this enterprise scale is you should have one central per geo region. For example, if you have for Europe, you should have one central log analytics workspace to have the control, all the security logs and everything, so you get a holistic view from that on the whole account. And why you one for Asia? It's our recommendation. You have in America and Australia. Otherwise, you will send a lot of data with high latency. That will cost you, right? It's also important that you can set the retention threshold. Default retention is 30 days, and it can be extended. It applies to what rules you have for how long should we retain data. And if you log everything for a long time, it will cost you a lot of money also. All right. I will go into the Azure portal and show. So if we go to this management groups there, I did create this in my before. Sorry, I use another web browser. Management group. This Go created before, and now we have to create this NVA where I've deployed my subscriptions. So under platform management, I have placed one of my subscriptions. And if we do policies that apply this, it's called. So on management group, I have two policies. One is that deploy LA config, another say deploy log analytics. And then on a higher level, the top level, I have this deploy diagnostic settings and deploy log analytics settings for all our services. And if we check on this, how this is configured, can go back and sorry. So what this will do, you have a few parameters: the workspace name, account, automation account, and the resource group name. And you have a policy rule. Policies. If this is description, and then we have deploy if not exists. If this resource does not exist in this subscription, we will create it. So in this case, it will look for a workspace. If the workspace does not exist, we will create it. And it will also say, you need to have an automation account. If it does not exist, if you remove it, it will be recreated. Then the environment can be compliant always, as the rules that we state from a higher level. So in this case, if we check in this subscription, this one, resource group, it has created this management. So in here, we have created a log analytics workspace and automation, and that is created by policy. I haven't created it. And you can state in the policy the parameters. I will show you later on the name of this. And then we also configure on every resource. Under activity, we have this diagnostic settings. And here we set, okay, we should send all the activity logs from each resource to this workspace. That is preconfigured in this platform. So we create, sends all the logs. We will have a view of this. And because we create, we check on click. We have connected this by automatic to an automation account, so we can enable update management, inventory, change tracking, and all the other services that's included. It's there out of the box. Then we can have an automated patching as well. Say, all this machine, if you create it in that subscription, we will patch it with certain rules. One other good thing to understand is if I go over here to where I'm this landing zone admin or owner who only has access to his zone, he also has access to this. But over here I will not see words because he doesn't have permissions, so it's empty. But if I'm going under service, here I have a virtual machine, for example, and here I have parameter or a section called monitoring. I have logs, and here I can search. It should be enabled. I don't know why. Maybe the policy didn't. Some demo hiccup. When end user, we set airbag on that as well. So the user has permission on the resource. We are in there only the data. All have access to central works, but landing zone can own my data. But the monitoring guys on the top of this platform see the whole platform, see everything. That's the idea of this. All right. Then we have this business continuity and disaster recovery. I jump directly into this documentation in here. And here you need to take this discussion of RTO and RPO and all of this kind things. But the things you need to be aware of in Azure, systems, we have divided one in 3 parts. Try to take the facilities, data center facilities, and move them quite a distance from each other. So if we have a hell of a fire, only one zone will fail. That's our plan. So if you have an important system, you can place it in more than one zone, then it will work, even if we have a disaster in our data center. And you can create an availability set. And when you create 2 virtual machines in availability set, that means we will know that these systems work together, so we can place them on different hardware in the same data center facility. So then you have 99.5, but if you create them in different in SLA on 99.99. Important how we build it. Doesn't support but all big ones do that. But yes, it's on the road. And you need to have backup. And when you create a backup, we have use our recovery service, but you can also use the Azure Site Recovery. It's combined in the same service. You can create backups, but you can also create a site recovery. So you can replicate a machine from one region to another region. So then you have the hard drives on the other region. So if one region fails, then you can, in an automated way, start them in the other region. But then you need to have planned this for your network should be in both regions. Should we switch the IP addresses, or switching the to the other side and update. It's a little bit of complexity when you do that, but it's possible. And you need to plan that. As out of this, in the enterprise scale, the default policy you can enable is, if you look at in the resource group, we will automatically create a recovery vault and enable backup on all the watch machines if we have that policy stated. Instead of someone that can forget to configure this, we do it by design. So in this case, we have automatically created in the same and will enable backup. And this is covered by policy. We also have services called traffic manager, and we can handle the public traffic that if needed. All right. Then we come to security, compliance, and the governance, where we can state, for example, if you create a key vault, if you create a storage account, we will not be able to create this with public endpoints in certain regions and certain SKUs and so on. So if we go directly into the portal, under policies, so if we remove the custom one, just check on the built-in one, we have huge amount of policies. We can say to complaint at a certain level, then we have some policies. Different regulatory on management groups or these or resource groups. But in our approach, the enterprise can say applies on, because if you move subscription from one management to another, the rule should be or we have this enabling Azure Monitor for a virtual machine. That thing didn't. So if I check one of these, this is all that including initiative, initiative, or and I can, and then in what scope do I assign this? It can be on the management group level. I can choose by my subscription, and if I choose a subscription, I can even choose the resource group. And when I apply a policy, you need to do some remediation if you have resources already created. But after the policy applied, they will apply on all the rights when you deploy new resources. So you should have the policy there as fast as possible. And if you have a green field, you talk about nothing, they will start in my policy. have a brownfield, you already have a big configuration of resources. You do audit. You can do audit as well and say, we do audit if you have a public endpoint. And so on. We place this on the landing zone scope. And then we can add, then we need to add the parameters. This is up to the policy. The policy says I need some parameters, and our GUI will say, okay, you need to. And then we can choose, right, where we have this, and we created them. We add the workspace, and then we can select it. We have some custom data as well in this. And when you check this in policies, you can have your status to compliance. And here we see this deploy log analytics on the top level, and we have one resource that is not compliant. So now we can do check this and click, right, one of my resources is not compliant, and then we see this is the configuration of the cognitive service. Okay, then we need to configure it, and we can force it. We can force it by creating a remediation task up here. So then we will reapply this and say, set this configuration. No questions asked. This is the demos. We come to the hardest part of this, where we create this platform, and we would like to automate this. Most of the stuff I have done in the portal. Now we will find a way to do create some CI/CD pipelines, create the DevOps style of this infrastructure as code. To remember, in this repo we use Git, but we will also support Azure DevOps. So it's possible to use both. I will demo Git in this case. So I will jump to this Git repository. I'll talk a little about this. So to install this infrastructure, we have articles what to do. You need to have some Git installed in use this code as a, and you need to have PowerShell, most of it written in PowerShell, and you also have the PowerShell resources that we support. And Git as well if you like. If you do unit, you can use the test code before you do the release. Will not test and so you can clone this or the template as well. When you do this, you need your own repository so you can if we go back, one thing you need to do you need to have certain permissions in Active Directory to this. You need to have the admin in Active Directory need to be have Azure in the I will show you. So if we go to the portal and then Active Directory and on the user, you can use this user. Sorry, where? No, sorry. Here we have it. As you need to log in as a global admin. This user is not global admin, it's not only admin, and you need to enable this access management for Azure resources. That should set to yes. Then the global admin has all access in Azure resources. Then, if a user is a global admin, many customer sits as logged in as global admin all the time, then it's also all the time admin in Azure. It needs to be connected together. So then you need to use PIM, so you only are admin for a small time, short time. All right. If we go back to the repository, then we need to generate some service principal that we can add in this repository. So if I log into in my repository for this, sorry, wait to the private send login. I'm logged in. Right. Here's my private repository. And this is a copy of the same. But one thing I have configured when I get this, I have created a secret down here with my Azure credentials for the service principals. So now this Azure repo where I can create actions, and in this enterprise scale repo, the actions, GitHub Actions is already configured. So now I have this push and pull and reference export actions. So time I do push and update the commit the configuration from Git. We will also do a pull, read the state from the configuration in Azure, so we don't miss the drift. If someone has added a policy by hand, and we are applying this, so during when we do the pull request of this, we will check and compare them, so that then you can handle this in a good manner. And these actions is also at Git. It's called AC Ops. It's also public, and here we have information about so you can contribute if you like, but this is configured, and if this is they not will just read the policies, and it will not collect all resource groups. You can enable configuration files configuration, but in big it will be huge. So if we then go to our text editor, like here I have this my VS Code, and I check in my folder where I have cloned this. So I have all this documentation, docs deployed that we have clicked and showed. Now we have created a Azure Ops folder with my tenant route, the management group level, and all the hierarchy of all of this. So if we look on the management, so there we have all the policies, the configuration, all of this policy configuration is JSON files. So what we can do now, if I'm a developer and I will need to update policy, I can apply new policy by just drag and drop in a file in my repository or edit the file. So, for example, I create a new branch. I don't know if everyone is apply deny policy. So now we have created a branch. Then add the file. File. So here I have assignment. Open. Note just this. This policy, policy in my group, and that the pub endpoint services. So I copy this file, and then I go in my folder structure and just paste it. Azure Ops, tenant, management group level, landing zones, online, and we put it. Everything should be put in Azure State folder, and then we paste this file. And if I look in here, you see it's update. It detects the file has been changed. Now we can check the file in here, and the landing zone. We the file. We identify it. We have all the correct copy from another environment. We need to update this policy assignment IDs, the definition ID, so it points to correct provider, and then the scope of it, what resource management group, and then the resource ID of the actual. Right. Then I go to and say I need to commit, update, add new policy file, and then to commit, and yeah, we'll do this. Now we will have one change to update, and we can push this to our. Yes, and then we need to what the branch origin, choose a directory, upload a new file. If we go back and check in our repository now, so now we have a new pull request that another person maybe go in and he checks this. Someone has done a pull request, would not like to update our platform. All right, I go through this. I read, check every file. Okay, this looks good. Or I do some updates and say, you need to update the following and so on. In this case, I just create this pull request. What will now happen, because we have configured the actions, if we no conflict push of this X will read the entire platform and update it and check, see if we have any issue with it, otherwise it will like this. So take migrant instance, but if you have thousands of subscription, things to be aware of. When we go back here, you can deploy your own templates this way, because we have created a framework. So in this case, we create a new policy. Then you create a policy, in this case, naming convention, and then you create this parameter file. Every policy needs a parameter file. In our case, we have imported all the policies, so the assignment we do is just a parameter file. But if you would like to create a new one, you need to import the policy file as well. And then you upload these files and then apply in the assembly. And doing I can't show it because I have an Steam subscription on my tenant. It's not enterprise agreement, but then you can say I need a new subscription, and it should be placed in that management group, and you can do that by code. This AC Ops will do that for you. Good to know that Azure Ops, the service principal that is used, need to have access in the enterprise agreement portal to create this subscription. All right. We have worked on it now. We have Azure DevOps, some how to configure this. Great, do the same. Still need to have the configure it. To pull and push that. Other things to be aware of in this case, if we look at this docs, you have some really good examples. If we check for this in this sample, so here you have, when I clicked in the portal in the beginning, I pointed to this JSON files. So here I have how to deploy this hub and spoke environment as a JSON file. Then you can take this, modify it, and deploy it by how you would like to deploy it. You don't need to use our Azure Ops actions. You can do it and in another way. All the code. We also have created examples. If you would like to do sandboxing, migration, create a management group by hand, creating new subscription and move a subscription to a new management group, you have samples of that JSON files. So it's just to learn how to write these JSON files and how to work with it. The things that is not included in this framework is not how to handle it over time, because if we go back to my presentation, we have it. If we on the first picture, this picture, this is the organization how you will what the model will have. This implementation doesn't talk anything about this. So if you implement this customer, you need to start the discussion how should we organize to be using this. Should we democratize the language? Every different project can have their they want. That is not to do. We work on website, but it's always hard part. The tech stuff is simple. It's just code and it can only be in one way or the way it's coded, and you can change it. But the soft stuff, it's a little bit more complicated. What happens if we go back to, it's still running. We added a new management hierarchy, so it's importing that as well. So we'll see what's happened. 50 minutes. Is there questions? Yeah. I will only share one picture or two more. I can share how how the framework is principle guides and the reference and everything. We also created a stuff called well-architected framework that's do more of the last mile, how to configure certain things. And then I will need to add this. Next week we have this Ignite, will be all digital. So if you have the time, register and go to these 2 sessions. Mark Rusinovich, when he talks inside our Azure data center, is really fun if you don't have seen it before. It's when you understand how we have built our Azure data centers. And then you have Rob Kiefers, who will talk about that and give more success to adopt planning cells. Thank you. If you hired people. I hope we have many questions from Malmö. Stockholm has no questions here. Sorry. Is it possible to... Can you take the sound from my computer? We have this, yeah. Maybe, yeah. Was it crystal clear, everything? Is it hard to understand? Because this is quite techy, and maybe you need to have worked with Azure a little bit to understand all this. Robin, what did you think? This was the second time you heard the story. Yeah, always news. They are that you can do it in Azure Malmö. Yeah. I think you lack a few features. Yes, I will. Compared to use Azure GitHub and Azure DevOps, if there are any difference, I think it's Azure DevOps is built afterwards, so it lack a few features, but it'll come up to speed. So all the new features will always come in GitHub and then come in Azure DevOps. I hope a few. And will reveal of new features. Yeah, it used to be conference in around 30,000 people, but we did, and I have this for partners, and it used to be like partners. It's like 100,000 partners online.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think it will be massive next week. Yeah, and it will only be like the big keynote with such and so, but then there will be smaller breakouts, and a lot of the content will be pre-recorded because we can't handle it other ways. So this week, all the big guys in Microsoft US has been done their recording. Yeah, yeah, but some of it, when we open Ignite, you can choose to watch a movie on demand. Some of the content, like the keynote, will be there live, and we'll record it. Has anyone? I have an app called SMS Livräddare, so it's a heart disease somewhere around here. Anyone would like to run? Mission cancelled.
Is it closed?
I don't know. It was cancelled. This is a service created of one of my friends, and I think Stockholm's läns landsting use this. So if you have an alarm call 112, someone with sees half the alarms will alarm this app well, and if I am in the range 5 to 6 minutes, I get the alarm, then I can choose. Okay, I will help. This time. Or someone calls say, but no. SMS Livräddare, and it's maybe it's test because it has been closed during COVID. So it got started this week. So, and yeah, that's another story. Yeah, if anyone have questions, you can just send me an email. And you have my email address here. I'm happy to help. Maybe I don't answer the same day, but I will try to help you. All right. Yeah, all right. Please do. Yep, we can see your screen. You can scan this code, and then you can be recognized as an Azure hero. Yeah. To communities that are not active person in the community. Okay. I don't know why it's. Do you hear at all? Yeah. All right. Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. We need to redo it. All right. Thank you. Yes. Came to you in school. It's right. Good. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye. Get some applause.